Good morning, everyone. We're just going to get started, so if I could have everyone grab their last cup of coffee and take your seats.
No, you gotta start turning people away. Say, look, we're sold out. Here, just separate it out. Do them red so we don't stand apart. So I say, and. Oh, Michael Ledoucin. Good. Oh, well, that's easy. Oh, we can accept that. Is it on? Is it on? Is it on? It's on. Please find your seats. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us to celebrate Research and Innovation Week in Orillia. I'm Langes Roy, Lakehead's newish VP of Research and Innovation. I've been here 6 months. So here we are. What do modern universities like Lakehead do best? They educate, of course. They drive innovation through research for social and economic development, yes. But they also convene and connect. And that's really the two aspects that we're celebrating or that we're focusing on today. Last week we had Research and Innovation Part 1, Research and Innovation Week Part 1 in Thunder Bay. And I'm really happy to be here in Aurelia to keep that momentum going. It's great to see so many partners, students, faculty, and staff here this morning. Some are in the room now, and some are busy getting ready for their presentations and posters later on. I'd like to just acknowledge who we've got in the room so far, or with us at this time. Chancellor Rita Deverell, our Chancellor, Sunil Kumar from the Board of Governors, Mayor Don McIsaac from the City of Aurelia. Mayor McIsaac, good morning. Councillor Phil Brennan from the Township of Severn. Where's that, Councillor? Hey, great, welcome. Paul Markle from the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. Paul. Alan Lafontaine from the Aurelia Chamber of Commerce. Great. Adam Callio from County of Simcoe Economic Development. Ryan Lay and Michael Ladouceur from City of Aurelia Economic Development. Welcome. Crystal Pollard from Invest Barrie. Hello, Crystal. Bruce Waite, our former Board of Governor member. Welcome. Before we begin, formally, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe of the Chippewa Tri-Council, which includes Rama First Nation, Beausoleil First Nation, and Georgina Island First Nation. Lakehead University's Aurelia campus is located on Treaty 16, also known as the Lake Simcoe Purchase of 1815, and very close to the Williams Treaties of 1923 and John Collins Purchase of 1785. For those of you joining from our Thunder Bay campus via live stream, I also want to recognize that Lakehead University's Thunder Bay campus is situated on the traditional land of the Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. I acknowledge the history and enduring presence of many nations in these territories, and I reaffirm my own and Lakehead University's commitment to fostering ongoing, respectful relationships with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Together, we have a long history of collaboration, and we remain dedicated to continuing this important work. Miigwech. So it's been a privilege to serve as Vice President, Research and Innovation over the past 6 months. I started my term with what I often refer to as my discovery tour. I visited our research centers, our institutes, labs, met with the brilliant minds behind our amazing research enterprise, our programs, our partnerships. I've had the opportunity to meet with many of our Aurelia and Barrie faculty and partners throughout Simcoe County as well. Let me tell you, we've got a lot to be proud of at Lakehead. Our excellence isn't just something we feel internally, it's being recognized on the national stage and even around the world. I'll speak to this a bit more in a few minutes, but first, I'd like to welcome some of our guests to share opening remarks. First and foremost, our Chancellor. I'd like to welcome Chancellor Rita Shelton Deverell to just say a few words, please.
It's wonderful to see everybody here, and I'm told that I have 1 minute and 30 seconds to welcome you. So welcome Frequently, I have been asked, including by Mr. Waits, what does a chancellor do? And I always give the answer, nothing. A chancellor doesn't do anything. However, an exception is basking in and taking credit for the accomplishments of the communities, which you are all doing today. They're your accomplishments. They are to be shared and encouraged. Have a wonderful time and realize how proud we all are to be basking in the accomplishments, real solutions to real problems for our communities. So welcome.
The Chancellor is also the one who shakes all the hands of the graduates, and at that magical moment, the graduates become graduates, right? So, thank you. I'd also like to invite to the podium our President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Jillian Siddall.
Thank you, Longis, and welcome everyone. Bonjour, it's wonderful to see you all here to begin Research and Innovation Week on the Aurelia campus. Research and Innovation Week has been a tradition at Lakehead for many years, but this year feels especially meaningful. 60 years ago, the founders of Lakehead University imagined something bold, a university rooted in access, opportunity, and innovation. A university that would serve its region not from a distance, not in an ivory tower, but in relationship. Nearly 20 years ago, that same spirit of possibility emerged here in Aurelia. Community leaders demonstrated real courage and vision. This campus exists because this region believed in the transformative power of higher education and chose to act on that belief. That spirit of partnership is not incidental to who we are, it is foundational to who we are. Lakehead has always been a place where curiosity meets community, where research is often collaborative and grounded in the lived realities of the people and regions we serve. Research and Innovation Week is one of the ways in which we make that visible. Research excellence may be recognized through rankings and awards, and it is, and we appreciate that. But what matters most is something less quantifiable: the trust of our partners, the strength of our collaborations, and the difference our work makes in people's daily lives. Discoveries emerge in many forms, through laboratory research and technological innovation, through the study of history, language, and philosophy, and through creative practice. They also emerge through conversations with communities, the study of lived experience, and the shaping of policies that improve daily life, work led by scholars across the sciences, social sciences, and humanities. And I look forward to introducing you to one of them in just a few minutes, Dr. Sarah Olutola. But first, I'm going to hand it back to Longis Miigwech.
Thank you, Dr. Siddall. Now, please join me in welcoming our next guest, Mayor Don McIsaac from the City of Aurelia.
Good morning, and thank you. I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to be here with you during Research and Development Week representing the City of Aurelia. Chancellor Rita had 90 seconds. I only get 1 minute, so I'll have to be quicker. But I have to comment, when she gave the job description of a chancellor of doing nothing, I once asked Bruce Waite what a lawyer does, and that's what he should have said. But he didn't. He had a long explanation. This annual celebration not only highlights the vital contributions of our researchers and innovators, but also underscores the spirit of curiosity and collaboration that defines this remarkable institution. It is wonderful to see the accomplishments of faculty, staff, and students on the work they've been doing, and I thank them for taking the time to engage with the community and foster collaboration. As we navigate through the challenges of a rapidly changing world, your research becomes ever more critical. I want to express my gratitude to everyone here at Lakehead University for your commitment to the Aurelia community. Together, we have the power to transform lives, address societal changes, and contribute to economic growth and create a lasting impact on our community and beyond. Let us continue to champion research and development as a vital component of our city. And finally, it's my pleasure to provide a proclamation declaring March 1st to March 7th, 2026, Research and Innovation Week.
Thanks so much, Mayor McIsaac. Research and innovation are, of course, integral to the mission and the culture of universities. We engage in this for learning and discovery and for the pursuit and application of knowledge, as was just mentioned in different words by Mayor McIsaac. Let me say a few just provide a few tidbits of information that I call bragging rights to describe our research enterprise. Recently, this organization that ranks all Canadian universities for their research impact, their research income, it's called Research InfoSource, and they ranked Lakehead as the #2 University of the Year in our category, Research University of the Year. And this is a measure of a broad range of not just research funding, but reputation and publications and impact and things like that. So we're up one spot from #3 to #2 this year. We're very proud of that. Yeah. And we continue to hold the top spots for cross-sectoral artificial intelligence publications. And when we say cross-sectoral, that means applying AI to chemistry or things that are in different sectors. And it just shows the innovative approach to Lakehead in doing those kinds of interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary research activities. And we're also the top spot in Canada for not-for-profit research income, which not-for-profits are those community organizations that we partner with and that really have an impact on local needs, local innovation needs. So that really is remarkable, and these aren't just statistics. These are really, tangible outcomes of what we're doing. What impressed me most during that discovery tour that I mentioned earlier is how our researchers are tackling grand challenges of today in a uniquely Lakehead way. And that is through a lens that is collaborative, innovative, and future-focused while being deeply rooted in partnerships with community and industry. That really is the Lakehead brand, and it's really showing its impact. I'd like to share just a few other bragging points, a few research highlights from Aurelia, from the Aurelia campus over the past year. Dr. Doris O'Brien-Tang, a postdoctoral fellow of the Faculty of Education, has received a SSHRC Insight Development Grant of almost $70,000 to support Indigenous language revitalization and Indigenous student access. That's a postdoc. As well, our Associate Professor, Dr. Amir Amali, from Electrical and Computer Engineering, has received almost $140,000 from the NSERT Alliance program, which is in partnership with federal agency, his research group, and EdgeCom Energy to develop autonomous artificial intelligent agents to support energy management for the smart grid with integration of renewables and solar cells and things like that. Also, Dr. Jennifer Jarman, Professor of Interdisciplinary Studies and Sociology, along with Dr. Charles Levko, have secured nearly $200,000 from SHIRK to lead research within a $2 million national network focused on sustainable agriculture in a net zero economy. So kudos to them as well. Lakehead Aurelia will host the Common Ground Food Forum here in June to bring together key food networks from across the country. So another indication of our impact in tangible ways in the community. These are just a few examples of the truly excellent projects our Lakehead researchers are leading. And R&I Week sets the stage to showcase and celebrate this excellence within our wider community. This year, our theme, if you've noticed on the program, on the website, every year we have a theme for R&I Week, and this year the theme is called Shaping the Evolution. And evolution, capital L-U, that's the title of our 2025 to 2030 Institutional Strategic Research Plan, which I'm sure you've heard of already. And for us, it was quite natural to adopt that theme as well, because the tagline underneath is celebrating our next-gen research, which is bridging the roots from our 60 years of excellence and looking forward to those cutting-edge research programs and technologies that we're moving forward over the next 5 years. So this is clearly, shaping Lakehead's identity as an institution, and it's shaping our collective future. We've got a packed schedule today and into tomorrow that will feature the incredible work happening in Aurelia, Barrie, and Simcoe County. Following the President's lecture, I'll invite you to head to the Orsi Family Learning Commons to browse the Indigenous craft market and support Indigenous craft vendors and artists. And then this afternoon at 3 p.m., Dr. Sandra Jeppesen will present her distinguished researcher talk on counter mapping borders in crisis, housing, healthcare, and migration. We've also got a number of poster presentations scheduled throughout today and tomorrow to share the latest findings from our faculty and student researchers. So I encourage you to participate in as many events as you can to support our faculty and students. Every year during Research and Innovation Week, we present multiple awards of excellence. I'm very pleased to announce that 2 Aurelia campus faculty members are being recognized this year. First, I'm pleased to present the Research Excellence Award, which recognizes quality and quantity of research, creative outputs, and activities, the impact of potential impact, the potential impact or the current impact or potential of the work, the quality of research collaborations, the scholarly productivity, and the training of highly qualified personnel. That's a pretty broad basket of research outputs, research attributes, and there's a very rigorous evaluation process to arrive at the winner of the Research Excellence Award at Lakehead University. And we break it down by categories. And this year, the recipient of the Research Excellence Award in the SHIRK, Social Science and Humanities Research Council category, is Dr. Sarah Olutola, who also happens to be today's keynote speaker. Congratulations. I'll just read a few more words. Last year, Dr. Olutola was inducted into the Royal Society of Canada's College of New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists. She's recognized as a groundbreaking scholar and leading voice in young adult literature, and her work bridges academic research and creative writing to spark global conversations about race, gender, and youth culture. Please join me once again in congratulating Dr. Sarah Olutola. Got to get it right for the website. onto that and put it proudly in your office or your thing. Next, I'm pleased to present the Building Research Capacity Award. This award honors researchers who build our university's collective capacity through visionary leadership, interdisciplinary collaboration, and a deep commitment to mentoring the next generation. Recipients of this award build a lasting legacy that strengthens our institution as a whole. This year, I'm honored to announce Dr. Nanda Kumar Kanavilil as the winner of the Building Research Capacity Award. Is he here? I'll keep reading. Dr. Kanavilil is a professor of biology and sustainability sciences at the Aurelia campus. As the founding director of the Research Center for Sustainable Communities, RCSC, he was the driving force behind the Aurelia campus's very first and currently only research center. Over a decade of Dr. Kanavilil's leadership, the center has become a thriving interdisciplinary hub for social justice, political economy, and environmental sustainability. The center has grown to include 9 permanent members and a global network of collaborators. His commitment to research capacity is evidenced by the significant output of the RCSC under his guidance. Over $1.5 million in research funding and the mentorship of over 200 highly qualified personnel. The RCSC is also committed to community engagement and knowledge mobilization through the organization of workshops, conferences, and a public speaker series. Please join me once again in congratulating Dr. Nanda Kanavilil. Let's move over here. As you can see, faculty and student researchers are doing amazing work here at the Aurelia campus, and we look forward to showcasing these accomplishments and more this week. So, thanks everyone for being here today and supporting Research and Innovation Week. And with that, I'll turn it back to our president to introduce our keynote speaker.
What a wonderful way to begin our morning. Congratulations again to Dr. Kanavilil and Dr. Olutola for your Research Excellence Awards. Your work reflects the very best of Lakehead. And thank you to Mayor McIsaac for being here. I want to do a shout out to the mayor. Your presence reminds us that universities thrive when they are deeply connected to their municipalities and regions. As I mentioned earlier, this year marks Lakehead's 60th anniversary. And to celebrate that milestone, I launched this President's Public Lecture Series. It's a way of opening our doors wider, of sharing ideas beyond our classrooms, of honoring 6 decades of scholarship and community partnership, and of inviting new conversations about the future we are building together. I'm especially honored that today's speaker is Research Excellence Award recipient, Dr. Sarah Olutola. Some of you may know her by another name, Sarah Raleigh, the acclaimed author of several young adult fantasy novels, including Effigies and the recently released The Queen's Spade. Through both academic research and fiction, she explores race, gender, and representation in popular media and youth culture. Her talk comes at a time when public discourse is increasingly polarized. Universities have a responsibility, perhaps now more than ever, to create space for thoughtful, evidence-informed, courageous conversations about racism, representation, and justice. I'm so pleased that you are here with us today, Sarah. May your lecture spark reflection, dialogue, and new connections. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sarah Olutola.
glad the microphone is already in place. I'm short, so I was a little worried. But thank you so much, Jillian and Langus, and everybody for being here, for inviting me. And thank you all for being here, just in general. My name is Dr. Sarah Olutola. I'm a scholar and author of books for youth, as Jillian said. So when I was asked to present a lecture specifically on critical race theory, critical race studies, I was a little nervous. But I said yes because it's a wonderful honor. And when I was asked what the title of my speech would be, I knew that I wanted to talk about America and all the political chaos going on. So I called my speech, as you can see, talking about racism during turbulent times. It's good? Sounds good? Thumbs up? Okay. I sent it in. It just felt right. Every day I'm hollowed out by the news. Trump and his cabinet lying with impunity. ICE agents hauling anyone with brown skin into unmarked vehicles to concentration camps. We're definitely in turbulent times. It took me a while, though, to realize that my title didn't fully encapsulate the language of race in the way that I truly wanted it to. Seems I was still nervous. Sorry. And why wouldn't I be? I am a Black woman talking about racism in public. Therefore, I can be seen as anything from an irritation to a convenient token to a ticking time bomb. So I thought back to how I felt after Trump was reelected for a second term. My panic, Black people's panic, many people's panic. In the days following the election, Black Americans, especially Black women, let it be known that they voted against Trump in the largest numbers based on exit poll data. 92%, you can see here, 92% of Black women, Black American women, voted for Kamala Harris, specifically to vote against Donald Trump. Black American women began to call themselves the 92% in order to separate themselves from others. They were done trying to save America. And Black people meant it. Many didn't show up to the No Kings, anti-Trump, and anti-ICE protests in 2025 and 2026, even though many non-Black people protested during the Black Lives Matter protests of summer 2020. So I changed my title. Black Betrayal or Black Refusal, a tale of the second Trump term. Still, I wasn't satisfied. Something was missing. And it was that something that had been making me feel nervous since the moment I was asked to give this speech. It was whiteness. Exactly. I wonder what people would have thought if they had seen this in their email inboxes. The title of the president's lecture is, but this is what it comes down to for a lot of people. We talk around whiteness. If we mention whiteness, it often makes white people feel uncomfortable and attacked. I'm reminded of Richard Dyer, a white British academic specializing in the relationship between entertainment and representations of race, sexuality, gender. In his seminal work, White, he exposes the consequences of our troubled relationship with naming whiteness. And he says, this book is about racial imagery of white people, not the images of other races in white cultural production, but the latter's imagery of white people themselves. This is not done merely to fill a gap in the analytical literature, but because there is something at stake in looking at or continuing to ignore white racial imagery. As long as race is something only applied to non-white peoples, as long as white people are not racially seen and named, they/we function as a human norm. Other people are raced. We are just people. He goes on to explain what it means that white people can move through the world and through life just being human. He says, there is no more powerful position than that of just being human. The claim to power is the claim to speak for the commonality of humanity. Raced people can't do that. They can only speak for their race, but non-raced people can, for they do not represent the interests of race. The point of seeing the racing of whites is to dislodge them/us from the position of power with all the inequities, oppression, privileges, and sufferings in its train, dislodging them/us by undercutting the authority with which they/we speak and act in and on the world. The sense of whites as non-raced is most evident in the absence of reference to whiteness, in the habitual speech and writing of white people in the West. We, whites, will speak of, say, the blackness or Chineseness of friends, neighbors, colleagues, customers, or clients, and it may be in the most genuinely friendly and accepting manner, but we don't mention the whiteness of white people, of the white people we know. This is to say that the power of just being human for white people is that it creates the illusion of dislodging white people from the power they wield while allowing them to continue to wield it with impunity. They get to throw rocks and hide their hands. But we've got to talk about whiteness in these turbulent times because I argue it is at the center of these turbulent times. Think about why Trump got elected. Think about how he and his acolytes are sneakily using racialized rhetoric masked by the power of whiteness to turn black and brown bodies into, quote, the enemies within, who must be exterminated in order for America to return to an imagined, mythological, dreamlike white nation. Make America great again. So, why talking about whiteness is hard? A look into the racial discourse in the Trump era. Now, I have videos in this lecture. We're all going to listen to people talk or not talk about whiteness. And I want you to think about how is whiteness framed and by whom? To what end? Think about this as you watch and be mindful that there may be strong language and uncomfortable imagery. Naming and perhaps shaming whiteness holds the key to understand three very fascinating truths about these turbulent times. The power, number one, the power of whiteness to both wield and hide its power is key to the regeneration of whiteness. And make no mistake, these times are turbulent because white people, whether powerful and wealthy, like Trump, or poor and uneducated, like his voters, are trying to ensure the regeneration of whiteness in an increasingly multicultural nation. Number two, the regeneration of whiteness is achieved primarily through militarized violence, as it has always been. We cannot protest ICE without understanding its ties to the post-9/11 militarization of American life, including the hyper-militarization of police departments and their unchecked brutality against black people, which led to the Black Lives Matter protests throughout the late 2010s and the summer of 2020. And we cannot protest police brutality without understanding its ties to white settler violence against enslaved Africans and besieged indigenous peoples. Through militarized violence, white settlers are still trying to regenerate whiteness through the brutalization of brown bodies. And number 3, but ensuring the continued power of whiteness means that even white people are at risk of being on the receiving end of violence. And this exposes the construction and arbitrariness of whiteness and the instability of the term race itself. And maybe that's why Black people are staying at home. So before we play this, I just want to frame it. This is a video I spliced together of Bill Maher, an American television host and comedian, and vlogger Martha Harris. In October 2025, Bill Maher interviewed Michael Steele, former chair of the Republican National Committee, turned anti-Trump political commentator, about the lack of Black representation and anti-Trump protests. And then in vlogger Martha Harris's January 8th YouTube vlog of this year, she has a very important message for Black people following the January 7th ICE killing of Renee Good, a queer, white, 37-year-old mother of 3 in Minneapolis, which sparked a wave of anti-ICE protests. So we'll play that video.
That is basically a valid point to make about the whole King thing. Here's a question that I saw, I did not realize until it hit the news a lot, was that it was very white. Yeah. What do you make of that? That the guy in Baltimore, the paper there said, we struggled to, our photographer, to find a picture of Black people in this march. I'm okay with that. I didn't go, and I feel like, well, you talk.
Well, we had a meeting.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
And let's just say it didn't go too well for white folks, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not our fight. You all know this, and I know you know this. These people are evil people. They don't care. I posted on the community tab yesterday evening in regards to this woman getting shot that they are not going to take responsibility for it. They are going to blame the victim. This is what they do, and we all know this. But this is the very reason why I say Black Americans, Black people, stay at home. Stay at home, because this is what they want. This is exactly what they want, and I bet money that these people hate that it was a white woman that was shot. And I'm just keeping it 100. It's a sad situation that this woman's life was taken like this. She had children. And your president pretty much so mocked this woman. I tell you, we are living in some ridiculous times. This man that's in charge, I swear, he is diabolical. He is a monster. He don't care about anyone. But I still say, do not hit these streets. I know they are doing a lot of protesting in different states. They're even doing it here where I live at. But you won't see me out there in the streets. No, ma'am. No, sir. I will not do it. I will not do it. It's not time for us to get out in the streets. Not for this. And I'm sorry to say it. But I am so sorry for this woman, her family. You know, it's just senseless. It's absolutely senseless. But you see that they have already flipped it making it seem like she tried to run over the ICE agents. And we all seen the video of how it went down. We seen it. Christy Nome, these people are such liars. They are such liars. They don't care about anyone but themselves. But I swear, man, I'll be so glad when this mess is over, and I want to see who's going to be held accountable after these 3 years are up with this administration. I want to see what these people are going to do. Because right now, it's a lost cause. Nothing's going to happen to these people whatsoever. These people do not care. They are just reckless with what they're doing, and they are going to have complete immunity, just like police officers, just like them. Even though the law states how that man basically shot into that woman's car is pretty much so illegal. But I'm telling you, they are going to flip it and make this woman be the bad person. Because like I stated, we all seen how it went down. That woman pretty much so backed up, turned her wheel to the right, and was trying to get out of the way. And this man basically just shot her in her face. 3 times, shot off 3 times, and hit her in her face. This is absolutely insane. You would think that we are living in a third world country right now, the way everything is going on. This is absolutely insane. But like I stated, Black people, you all know what to do. It's not our time. It's not our time to get out in these streets. The Republican Party is so disgusting. They are so disgusting. When you think about how many times Donald Trump was impeached, how many times this man was impeached, he should never have gotten into office. They could have convicted him, and we would not be looking at this fool right now if they would have did everything they needed to do. If these people would have done what they needed to do, we would not be looking at Donald Trump right now. But it doesn't make a difference right now because they can impeach him all day long. But if they're not going to convict him, it does not make a difference. But you all come below and tell me your thoughts on it, because this is just some nonsense right here.
in physical violence, distrust, and lost opportunities. Since the day I became a grad student, I've been in academic rooms where I have been silenced. I've had students and peers dismiss, disrespect, and undermine me. Cultural theorist Edward Said was a Palestinian-American academic and one of the founders of post-colonial studies, which is where my research is largely in. You may have heard of his books Orientalism, published in 1978, and Cultural and Imperialism, published in 1993, but he also wrote Representations of the Intellectual in 1994. In the chapter, Speaking Truth to Power, he spoke of the difficulty of naming, and it resonates with me. He said, "Nothing in my view is more reprehensible than those habits of mind in the intellectual that induce avoidance, that characteristic turning away from a difficult and principled position, which you know to be the right one, but which you decide not to take. You do not want to appear too political. You are afraid of seeming controversial. You need the approval of a boss or an authority figure. You want to keep a reputation for being balanced, objective, moderate. Your hope is to be asked back, to consult, to be on a board or a prestigious committee, and so to remain within the responsible mainstream. Someday, you hope to get an honorary degree, a big prize, perhaps even an ambassadorship. For the intellectual, these habits of mind are corrupting par excellence. If anything, it's okay. If it happens, it's okay. If anything can denature, neutralize, and finally kill a passionate intellectual life, it is the internalization of such habits. Personally, I have encountered them in one of the toughest of all contemporary issues, Palestine, where fear of speaking out about one of the greatest injustices in modern history has hobbled, blinkered, and muzzled many who know the truth and are in a position to serve it. Then he says the goal of speaking the truth in so administered a mass society as ours is mainly to project a better state of affairs and one that corresponds more closely to a set of moral principles, peace, reconciliation, abatement of suffering applied to the known facts. True free speech should serve the common good, not serve those who threaten to destroy it. Scholars should write, research, and speak out for that common good, to create an egalitarian world where we all are allowed to exist without fear. Martha has every right to tell Black people to stay home, and she's right to guess that they were pissed that ICE killed a white woman. Whether they means white people or Trump or MAGA, ICE had been taking brown-skinned immigrants for months. It was only after the death of Renee Good and then Alex Preddy, who we'll talk about later, a white male nurse, that white people galvanized in such a way that actually scared Trump and his followers and even turned some of his own followers against him. Black people have been protesting for decades, centuries. But Black people on the front lines create a kind of allowance for the tools of white settler militarized violence to kill with impunity and without sustained action from the broader community. Black people in protest are like the red-shirted ensigns in Star Trek, who just get plowed through every episode because there's so many of them and they're faceless and disposable. We are both shield and cannon fodder. Perhaps that is why it disturbed Bill Maher to see the lack of Black bodies at those anti-Trump protests. If Black people are killed on the front lines of protests, will it create a sustained movement? Protests over George Floyd's death in the summer of 2020 seemed to promise that, but look how quickly the pendulum turned. Soon, white people were over it and elected Trump 4 years later. But if Americans had learned from the Black Lives Matter protests, if they had learned from the history of white violence against black and brown bodies through military and policing authorities, then they might have anticipated what was to come, the rise of ICE, the tools and rhetoric of war being used even against white people like Renee Good. Let's back things up. Cultural theorist Patrick Deere says of Black Lives Matter that, this is a quote, one of the remarkable achievements of the Black Lives Matter, or BLM, movement has been to render visible the militarization in American society and to expose its intimate relationship to longer histories of structural racism and white supremacy. To do so, BLM has both intervened in the historical memory of America's wars and challenged U.S. citizens to question the logic of the war paradigm in the name of a demand for peaceful existence beyond the reach of unlawful police killings and state violence. Through the BLM protests in 2010 and in 2020, images of black people throwing Molotov cocktails and burning buildings became a mainstay in American and international media. The rhetoric of war was to describe black protests, and black people were described as the combatants. This war rhetoric was directly contradicted by an unnamed black protester who participated during the April 2015 protests in Baltimore following Freddie Gray's death in police custody. In the midst of the protests, which was escalated by militarized police and then the National Guard that came in, the protester said something interesting to the press that exploded the war rhetoric surrounding the protest. This is what he said. First of all, this is not a war. It's not a war. We want peace, but y'all got to give us that. And if y'all keep coming and taking everything we got, we're going to take what y'all got. We're not playing out here. This is not war, but we want our rights. War rhetoric is always strategically used to justify violence against black and brown people. Remember the war on drugs in the 70s, in the 80s, during Nixon and Reagan eras, which became justification for mass incarcerations of black people? Remember George Bush's war on terror post 9/11, which saw sort of Rudyard Kipling's white man's burden, military intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan that claimed many lives and increased surveillance and persecution of black and brown people at home. They were always in the name of protecting the mainstream, quote unquote, the silent majority, quote unquote, more euphemisms for white people. War discourse has and continues to mobilize violence against black and brown bodies, while whiteness hides itself. Trump made that clear in his recent State of the Union address on February 24th. Take a listen.
But when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President, J.D. Vance.
Hooray! Yeah, when I heard that, I had the same expression on my face as the U.S. Representative for Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, you see at the end of the video. Pay attention to the word that Trump uses. He accuses Africans, Somalis in Minnesota, of plundering and shredding. He declares a war on fraud to protect the, quote, fabric of our nation. And he certainly meant white people when he said our nation, especially looking at his cabinet. These words have power. By insisting that the scary black and brown people are doing violent things, it allows Trump to use militarized violence, deploying the U.S. military to brutalize and kill these people, thus ensuring America as a white nation. And we'll play the next video.
President Donald Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota on Thursday in response to protests against immigration agents following the killing of Renee Good. This move, which would be the first time Trump has used the Insurrection Act, would allow him to deploy the military on U.S. soil and is expected to further escalate existing tensions. Trump said on Truth Social he will use the Insurrection Act in Minnesota if the state's Democratic leaders, quote, don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE. The Insurrection Act, a law from 1792, allows the president to use the U.S. military domestically. This deployment is authorized to put down, quote, unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages, or rebellion, end quote, when such events make it impossible to enforce U.S. law through standard, quote, judicial proceedings. It is the primary exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, which generally bars the military from domestic use. Invoked approximately 30 times in U.S. history, the act was last used in the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Crucially, the last time it was used without a state governor's request, as would be the case here, was during the 1960s civil rights movement. The act allows the military to enforce federal law and perform law enforcement actions such as arresting people, but gives no authority over state or local laws. While Trump has sent troops to other U.S. cities, this would be the first deployment under the Insurrection Act, making it harder to challenge in court. The fatal shooting of U.S. citizen Renee Good by ICE agent Jonathan Ross sparked national controversy and inflamed tensions over the Trump administration's immigration tactics. Subsequent protests in Minnesota have led to clashes between ICE agents and residents, escalating when agents shot a Venezuelan migrant in the leg in Minneapolis on Wednesday, claiming it was a, quote, defensive shot. Trump's Truth Social post on Thursday is the clearest indication yet that the president plans to invoke the Insurrection Act, which he has reportedly considered for other U.S. cities previously. For more on this story, check out the article at the link in the description.
I think Donald Trump wants to use Minneapolis as a key or a hotspot to launch his coup. He's trying to create violence so that he can send in the troops.
As tensions on the ground in Minneapolis continue to intensify between residents and immigration enforcement agents, 1,500 U.S. troops are on standby in Alaska awaiting President Donald Trump's orders to descend on Minneapolis, as Trump threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act in response to the outrage following the shooting death of Renee Good by an ICE agent. Trump sticking to his talking points that ICE is deporting some of the world's most violent criminals, asking why Minnesota is fighting this, and suggesting many of those protesting ICE are professional agitators and anarchists. But less than half the country is buying that narrative. According to polling from CBS News and YouGov, only 44% of respondents believe ICE is targeting dangerous criminals.
What this is about is coming into our city by the thousands and terrorizing people. And this is not just about resisting Trump. This is about loving and caring for the people that call this city home.
Now, lawmakers in Washington are threatening ICE's funding over the chaos playing out in Minneapolis. Democrat Senator Ruben Gallego on CNN State of the Union.
But we cannot keep funding this, this type of goon squads that are just spreading throughout the whole country.
Late last week, a federal judge prohibited ICE from using chemical irritants, retaliating against peaceful protesters, and conducting traffic stops without reasonable suspicion. suspicion. Orders Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem readily dismissed.
That federal order was a little ridiculous because that federal judge came down and told us we couldn't do what we already aren't doing. We only use those chemical agents when there's violence happening and perpetuating, and you need to be able to establish law and order to keep people safe.
That same CBS poll showing 54% of Americans believe Trump's policies are decreasing peace and stability at home and the rest of the world. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
It's interesting that the Insurrection Act was last invoked during the Civil Rights Movement. One of the protesters in this video said that Trump was trying to create violence to stage a coup. And then you have Trump, who calls protesters violent criminals, which excuses ISIS' enormous funding and their murders. He calls ICE patriots, even while they use the tools of war to terrorize protesters. ICE's racialized violence against immigrants and citizens alike has to be understood within the broader context of white colonial settler violence, largely because the white settlers' aim to regenerate whiteness has often been accompanied by and perhaps spurred by a general anxiety about what whiteness even is. Many critical race theorists will say that race itself is a construct. Whiteness has been constructed by social, political, and economic forces, which is why the meaning of whiteness itself is unstable. Think about, for example, how important state control over procreation has been to the continued maintenance of America's white national identity. The first anti-miscegenation law was created in 1661 in Maryland, prohibiting white and black marriages to keep whiteness, quote unquote, pure. During the antebellum period in America, when chattel slavery was practiced, laws that, quote, rendered illegitimate the children of quote, Negro slaves and white masters determined the slave or free status of such children according to the condition of the mother. Children produced through interracial unions between white male slave owners and black enslaved women, mostly non-consensual, were considered slaves. And these children were considered thus property of the slave owner. The establishment of America as a white settler nation involved strategies to maintain white patrilineal ownership over stolen indigenous lands. So policing children's racial identities enabled a system of property transmission designed to ensure the white racial purity of the nation while specifying the realm of rights and citizenship as a particularly white male capitalist space. As Ruth Frankenberg writes in White Women, Race Matters, this is a quote, as much as laws prohibiting legitimated unions across race lines drew on cultural dimensions of racism, such laws also served to ensure the continued existence of an enslaved population and to restrict membership in the group with economic and political power. The conception of membership within a national community here is key, a national community of citizens. While the one-drop rule managed the racial identity of interracial black-white offspring, banning them from the rights and privileges of whiteness, state legislation allowed for the reclassification of indigenous children as white. According to Susan Koshy, she writes, in the early period of white settlement, intermarriages between white men and Native American women were accepted and even encouraged because they afforded white men access to land and trading rights. The limited number of white women at that time, and the role of Native American women as cultural mediators in an alien environment enhanced the value of such relationships. Furthermore, the mixed race offspring of such marriages were, in certain instances, able to claim a white identity. Indeed, the Virginia anti-miscegenation law contained what was called the Pocahontas exception, whereby persons with 1/16 or less Native American blood were classified as whites. So already we start to see the construction of whiteness and the instability of whiteness, such that so much work has been done to establish what whiteness even is and who can be white. America's national and social borders were fortified by the careful production of desirable and undesirable bodies. At stake is the definition of America as a white nation. In that case, people can already be white, become white, and become unwhite, losing their whiteness for the sake of the regeneration of a particular kind of whiteness that defines the nation. For example, anti-Semitism in America often forced Jewish people to occupy an unstable middle space of off-whiteness. Who belonged in the privileged white category was often determined by how one oriented themselves towards not only whiteness, but also blackness. Karen Brodkin argues in How Jews Became White Folks and What That Says About Race in America the following: changes in our racial assignment have shaped the ways in which American Jews, who grew up in different eras, have constructed their ethno-racial identities. Those changes give us a kind of double vision that comes from racial middleness, of an experience of marginality vis-a-vis whiteness, and an experience of whiteness and belonging vis-a-vis blackness. In this phenomenological sense that critical race theory theorist Sarah Ahmed uses in her theory, depending on how one is oriented towards blackness and whiteness, one can become a desirable body, a patriot, and thus a rights bearer within the white American body politic, or one can become an undesirable body that must be eliminated for the sake of the whiteness of the nation. Which takes us to a tale of two white men, Charlie Kirk and Alex Preddy. 32-year-old Charlie Kirk was an American right-wing politician. He co-founded the conservative youth organization, Turning Point USA, and he'd go to universities to argue with leftist youths. On September 10th, 2025, he was assassinated by a gunman at Utah Valley University. 38-year-old Alex Preddy was an intensive care nurse for the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. On January 24th, 2026, he was shot multiple times by ICE officers and killed while protesting ICE in Minneapolis. Watch these videos, again, disturbing, uncomfortable language being used, but still listen to the discourse, the discursive framing of both white men. So we'll first play this video discussing Charlie Kirk.
What do you take from Charlie Kirk, the communicator?
So many things, just by watching him and by being around him. But I think most of all, standing firm in your convictions and picking a fight, especially when you know you have the facts and the truth on your side, but doing it with a smile. And that's something Charlie did so brilliantly and well. He would go to these campus reform events and he would say to the crowd, if you disagree with me, come to the front of the line. And I find myself doing that in the briefing rooms, picking on the reporters whom I know very much disagree with me and with the president. But as long as you believe in what you're saying and you have conviction in it and you have truth and the facts on your side, it makes it a lot easier to say it. And that's what Charlie did for a living. And I know he inspired me as a young voice for President Trump now, like you said, behind the White House podium. And, before every briefing, I always pray to Jesus Christ. And Charlie was so outspoken with his faith, and I will continue to be in honor of him. But I'll also think of Charlie and just how brilliantly he was able to combat the lies with facts and to do it with a smile.
You really have to wonder, in fact, you know, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. You know, this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive. They think we're like, oh, of course, that's why we need affirmative action, because you have impressed us with your brilliance. Of course. Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. They think as they kind of now reveal that I'm only here because of anti-white, anti-Asian forced discrimination policies that turn me into a bitter, resentful activist that hates white people, honestly, through our policies.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
If you don't think that this wasn't a fucking attack on free speech, you're insane. They're trying to tell every single person that if you speak out, we'll fucking kill you. Charlie Kirk wasn't the most aggressive person. He was actually the only person that was willing to have open dialogue with the other side, and they fucking killed him for it. I'm fucking done. I'm done tolerating any of this crazy shit. I'm done tolerating fucking making any excuses or having any kind of empathy for these crazy fucks. This is good versus motherfucking evil, and we've known it for a long fucking time. Our leaders know it, you know it, we all know it, and we've all stayed silent, and we've all tried to be good people, and we've all let the psychological warfare convince us that maybe we could be a little more tolerant, but the problem is they're not tolerant of us. And if you're that naive and that stupid to continue to give out tolerance to people because you have been convinced to feel bad or feel guilty, those people.
I think the video is done. Yikes. Podcasters from the manosphere certainly use strong language. It was also interesting to hear Charlie Kirk sort of slip in Asian people, right, as well. That black people aren't just taking jobs. Black people who we don't have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. We're taking jobs not only from white people, but Asian people. That's also something to unpack. I'll let you think about that. But through language, one can orient or reorient a person in relation to whiteness. So let's look at the next video. So, The Unmaking of Whiteness, A Tale of Two White Men, Alex Preddy.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe in Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protested?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Can you offer clarity on
This
where
individual
those were found?
showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
Meant to leave the scene.
We're continuing to follow the exact same protocols that we always have. And so this investigation is ongoing. We're continuing to gather the facts as they unfold throughout that. And we'll do it just like we did under the entire Trump administration and previous administrations. Nothing has changed, and we'll continue to release details as we have them. But I want you to not distract away from the facts of this situation. Our law enforcement officers were there doing a targeted operation against an individual who was in this country illegally and had a criminal conviction for domestic assault with intent to do bodily harm and other convictions as well. This individual went and impeded their law enforcement operations, attacked those officers, had a weapon on him and multiple dozens of rounds of ammunition, wishing to inflict harm on these officers, coming brandishing like that and impeding their work that they were doing.
Made claims that the individual posed a threat to law enforcement. I guess
That is no claim. It is the facts. The facts of this situation. This individual showed up to a law enforcement operation with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence, and he was asked to show up and to continue to resist by a governor who's irresponsible and has a long history of corruption and lying. When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts. This is the same protocol we'll always follow. Who would trust Governor Walz at this point? The man has stood up and encouraged resistance. He has refused to partner with us. He's sacrificed his citizens' safety and their well-being by choosing the side of people who break the law and who steal money and who perpetuate violence. He has chosen all of that and backed an administration previously that allowed an invasion of our country. We need to partner with people who truly understand that the law is the law, and in the United States, we will keep people safe.
It's almost as if you have Charlie Kirk as the poster child for a moral white Christian nation. Never mind his violent bigotry or the fact that he himself stated that gun deaths are necessary to maintain gun rights in America. And by the way, as of this weekend, Charlie Kirk's face is on the Department of Education, on a banner on the building that reads, "Empowering our states to tell the stories of heroes." On the other hand, Kristi Noem and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made an almost Herculean effort to de-whiteify, if that's a word, Alex Preddy, to name him a terrorist, which in the post-9/11 era is a term typically associated with brown bodies, and to turn him into an undesirable body. In the aftermath of the 2014 shooting of Black teenager Michael Brown, images of the ensuing Ferguson protests quickly became reconfigured within national media. The media repackaged the protests into narratives aligned with dominant racial discourse that constructs African Americans and Black people as prone to irrational violence. To see the MAGA movement do the same to Alex Preddy proves that whiteness will cut off its own limbs to preserve its unstable identity and power. Yes, this chaos, these lies, this gaslighting, these rhetorical tricks are all for the regeneration of whiteness and white power. But as we see through these videos, and as Black people have already seen, which is why some refuse to protest today, the regeneration of whiteness has violent costs and will continue to have violent costs unless we speak truth to power and be unafraid to name whiteness as being at the core of the turbulent times we're living in. And no, this isn't just limited to America. These pictures were taken by me last September when I traveled to Lethbridge, Alberta, to present at a literary festival, Word on the Street. It was a great festival. I walked around the city afterwards, and I came across this memorial service for Charlie Kirk at a park. Interestingly, there were more American flags than Canadian. And when the white attendees locked eyes on me, it became very clear that I was an undesirable body in this space. I felt scared. And, well, I ran back to my hotel. So after this lecture, don't go home angry. Don't go home with a sense of moral superiority or feeling targeted. Go home with the conviction to be uncomfortable in considering how your whiteness or proximity to whiteness affects your actions. Really think about the role whiteness, as unstable as that term is playing in creating these current turbulent times around the world. Don't just laugh at this title. Do something about it. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you for your very fascinating presentation. I want to ask this from the point of view of the higher education, universities and colleges in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we know what's going on in the States. The MAGA and their goons have been shutting down open dialogue and research in all their universities, and even some of the most prestigious ones, like Columbia, have catered to and caved in. Fortunately, so far, it seems Harvard is fighting in the courts and actually winning against these goons. But it's a bit, in my view, these organizations of higher learning have totally shamed themselves, in my view, in the United States. So let's talk about Canada.
Yes.
What's really going on here? We've seen McGill University deny Palestinian speakers. We've seen the city of Ottawa unfund gay movements because there were some supporters of the Palestinian cause in their parade. Where are the universities here? Like, are they being influenced by the same goon show that's going on in the States, or are we taking a higher level? I hope we're taking a higher level. But you're one of the people in one of these prestigious organizations. What do you see going on in this country?
That's a wonderful question, and I'm in a position to answer it. I've been in those rooms, those boardrooms, and have been an undesirable body in those boardrooms because of precisely what you've said. You know, when Kamala Harris, after losing the election, she was interviewed by Stephen Colbert, who's a comedian, and one thing she said was she didn't anticipate the capitulation of media organizations, universities, et cetera, to this sort of authoritarian regime. And right now in Canada, what I have found a little troubling is there's this sort of zero focus, and even articles being written about young white men not, coming to university and secondary institutions in as high a number as they used to, and wokeness being blamed, right? When I'm sure there are so many more complex and nuanced reasons as to why perhaps we're seeing young white men not coming to university in as high as numbers as before. But instead of trying to think about those complex and nuanced situations, again, I've been in rooms filled with people from different higher-ups from different Canadian universities saying, okay, well, how do we make academia less woke? How do we make it less woke so we can make certain people, particularly, implying young white men, feel more welcome? And again, that's not to say that certain people should not be welcome in universities. But universities, to me, have always been spaces in which we can have this dialogue and in which we can speak truth to power. It's one of the last bastions, I think, in which people can have dialogues, people can learn, right? This is the reason for education, the reason why we research, like Edward Said said. So it scares me a little bit when people in the position to do something about it, in those higher positions, are more worried about sort of welcoming and allowing the kind of language that you heard from Charlie Kirk, disparaging black women, and kind of like sort of letting that be the narrative of post-secondary institutions, rather than really reinforcing and allowing for the safety and the inclusion of different kinds of research and the safety of different kinds of people, from black people to indigenous people, queer people, especially when you think about what this space is like compared to what the outside is like. In the outside, it's actually people who are more conservative, who have far more power, people who are, owners of corporations, right? Own the media. Take a look at what's going on with Paramount, or Megamount, as they say. People who are very rich tend to vote conservative, tend to, put money behind those who will, take opportunities and just basic resources away from the weak, the powerless. And so I think that we as Canadians, again, we can't sort of be on this moral high grounds and relax, because a lot of the language that you've seen, and I focused this on America, but I ended with what I saw in Alberta, which right now is sort of thinking about separatism from the nation. A lot of that language is here in Canada. We might not talk about it, I think, as much. And there's always like this idea of quiet racism in Canada as opposed to like the louder, obvious racism. But we may not talk about it as much, but it's here, it's festering, it's in our politics. And this has to be a space in which people can educate themselves, learn from researchers, and feel safe to speak from this position. We have to, it's up to us to allow post-secondary institutions to remain those safe spaces for people who outside of these institutions are vulnerable. Should have worn running shoes. You're doing great. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much for that excellent presentation. Very thought-provoking and very well presented. Really congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
The question that I have is, again, this is just maybe my perception, that if I look back 10 years ago, things seem to be better. Maybe it was just my perception. But just kind of curious in your thought as to if things, if I compare to 10 years to today, if things are not quite as good, and where do you see things going forward? Is it going to get better? It's going to get worse before it gets better? Just be interested in your thoughts.
A part of me is a pessimist. And when I see, I mean, I wrote this speech and then like a day later, America and Israel like started a war against Iran. So sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, we're all screwed. But I can't, it's not. It has actually been emotionally tasking for me as an author, as an intellectual, as a scholar, and as just a human being sometimes to wake up every day and to listen to the news and to see, you know, something else crazy has happened. So I don't know if things will get better. I think things will get better, again, if people accept that speaking truth to power is at the core of all of this. And if we don't accept lies and gaslighting and alternative facts, like we have to kind of stand up to those who would prefer to hoard power for themselves so that the vulnerable can continue to be stomped on, right? People who can't pay money, can't pay their bills, can't put food on their tables, can't afford health care, et cetera, et cetera. 10 years ago, though, was 2016. And that was a time when Black Lives Matter protests were exploding because there was so much police brutality against Black people. And 20 years before that, you know, I think it was 1992, we had the beating of Rodney King. So it's always like from whose perspective. I always find it interesting that some of the people who consider themselves leftist and anti-Trump now are kind of nostalgically looking back on a better time. It's like, well, a better time for who? Because there were people who were, you know, targeted post 9/11, right? Because of being brown, Black, Muslim, et cetera, et cetera. And again, as I say, historical memory is important. If we had learned perhaps from that time, then we would have been able to, I guess, right, and anticipate that this was going to happen. Trump did not start racism. He did not start the kinds of sociopolitical energies and the kind of grievances that created him, that allowed him to rise to power. This has been building, like I said, for hundreds of years. It's just that often people like me who've been sort of sounding the alarm bells get silenced, get told, you're too political, you're making us uncomfortable. And now here we are. But again, I think if you are strong enough to stand up at a podium, knowing that there are probably people in the audience who really don't like what you're saying, but you say it anyway, You know, it's like what, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. What they tell you when you have anxiety, feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm definitely doing that right now. But if you're strong enough to do that, then perhaps you can make a change. And again, that's what post-secondary institutions and research, that's what it's about. It's people who are trying to make a change in their own way, right? And we have to allow for the post-secondary institutions to continue to do that good work.
Any other questions in the room? One online?
This one's from online. What can ordinary people do each day to help build a more tolerant society?
You know what? I knew I was going to get that question. I knew it was going to be something like, what can I do to not be racist? Or something like that. But I think it's a great question. And also, I anticipated what I wanted to do if I get that. I actually want to turn it to you guys. What do you think you can do in your everyday life to make a change, right? Yes. I'm in teacher mode right now. Yeah.
And I'm a former educator.
Yes.
2 parts to this. I'd like to go back to your question. Have things gotten worse? And when I look back as an educator, say 15 years ago, we had some political leaders that set some fairly high examples for us, some fairly good examples. Today, unfortunately, we have political leaders, not just one south of the border, but many others who are demonstrating behaviors that are seen by other adults, that is giving permission for other adults to behave the same way they are, and as such, their children are behaving the same way those parents are. That's what we're seeing in our schools today, and that is only one of the issues that is affecting the quality of education that we're able to deliver this day. In my past research, I'll answer your question, what can we do? I found 2 studies that the biggest difference that we can make as individuals is what we do in our household, and that is how many meals we eat with our children in a week. Think about it. We have 11 possible meals that we can eat with them. 5 dinners, then the weekend, there's 6 other meals. They found in both studies that if you have less than 4 opportunities per week, the increased use of alcohol, earlier sexual activity, poor grades in school, etc., drops off. The average in America is 2.8 meals per week. The average in Canada is 4.2 meals per week. We are not spending enough time with our families, with our children, talking about issues. Setting that example that needs to be set, doing what you're doing, creating those situations where discomfort can lead to conversations that lead to better understanding. And I'd like to address finally the term tolerance. I've always had a problem with the term tolerance. I would rather work towards understanding. I do not wish to be tolerated. I wish to be understood. And I think we need to continue to work on that within our family unit. If we start there, then it can grow outwards. We cannot solve the world's problems, but we can certainly start at home.
Interesting, yeah.
You might take issue with what the word tolerance and what I'm going to say. I think we had the answer way back after World War II. I just wrote, I couldn't help but to recheck some reading I'd done previously by Benjamin Ferencz, who was the U.S. prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials. He was a American Jewish scholar. He was an amazing, amazing man. I'll just give you a quick quote to what he said, which I think is the answer. Quote, "I prefer law to war under all circumstances. Nuremberg taught me that creating a world of tolerance and compassion would be a long and arduous task. If we did not devote ourselves to developing effective world law, the same cruel mentality that made the Holocaust possible might one day destroy the human race." This man knew what he was talking about decades ago. That's the answer.
Thank you. Are we not? Is there anyone else? As an author, well, people might be thinking, as an author, as an educator, I would also like to say protect books, protect libraries. There's a reason why conservatives tend to try to censor and ban particular books from racialized people, indigenous people, queer especially people. And that is, again, to erase historical memory, to erase different viewpoints. And so we have books like Lawrence Hill's The Book of Negroes, right, being targeted and banned in books because it says the word Negro, you know. But it's speaking about both American and Canadian history in a way that will help us understand the world that we're currently living in. So this is something that is happening, not just in America, but in Canada. If you have ties to libraries, support them. If your children are going to school and you're at a school, you know, a parents' meeting, make sure that you're standing there, you know, in the veil, protecting knowledge, protecting history. Because once that's gone, we're in deep trouble. Ace?
I just also wanted to answer what we can do to challenge racism in our daily life. And I think something extremely important is that I try to do as a white man is if I'm in a room full of white people, sometimes things are said and I don't agree with them. And the important thing to do is to challenge those things. If your friend, your coworker, your classmate, is saying something racist or that you know is wrong, doesn't have to be racist, homophobic, whatever sort of bigotry they might be saying, challenge it, call them out. Don't just nod or go, oh, you know, that's super problematic, but I don't want to get involved. They're not my fight. It is our fight. It's everyone's fight. And silently nodding along is saying that you're agreeing with that sentiment, even if you don't actually feel that way.
Great. Thank you. I'll add to that wonderful sentiment that I think many of us here, well, thank goodness I don't, but many people probably have some family members that do speak the way Charlie Kirk did, and that perhaps do speak the way Trump does and support Trump. But part of the problem has been, you know, do those people who may disagree with their family members and their friends, do they actually challenge? Do they actually push back? Some people will say, oh, that's just Uncle John saying, is you know, what he usually says when he talks about the scary black immigrants. We'll just, you know, we're family, we'll just let it go. Don't just let it go. I think letting it go was part of the reason why Trump got elected in the first place. So we always have to be in those spaces and be prepared to challenge, to speak, even if it means that there is some kind of cost, and there'll always be, right? People might be mad at you. People might not want to speak with you. They might argue with you. Don't be afraid of those situations. And again, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable.
Just one more question on the way down here. Not a question, more just a factoid, I guess. I grew up in Dubai, so Middle East, and my parents are currently in the Middle East. And I just wanted to say that the uncertainties of the time really does hit you, because one day you wake up and you're just like, are my parents gonna be fine? Or like, what is gonna happen, right? So just wanted to say how instead of learning from past mistakes, I feel like there is a lack of understanding and a lack of just need to understand. Like nowadays, political leaders don't really remember the past, is what I feel like is happening. And one of the ways that is showing is with the lack of like funding for education. But also one of the things that I wanted to say with what you mentioned about libraries, one of the panel discussions I attended recently, one of the panelists was like, we need physical libraries because only in physical libraries can you see the book next to the book that you're looking for. So you're going to see a contradiction or maybe another take on the same work. And only by looking at different conversations around the topic can you really learn from the perspectives around it. So again, it's very important to have physical spaces, especially libraries, especially with the digitization of the world. I think we really do need to double down on the physical library spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yes, we'll leave it on that note that we must support libraries in all its forms, and I agree that I think digital spaces and that sort of thing, I think that's also helpful for accessibility, but these physical spaces are literally in some physical ways sometimes being under siege, and the books are being taken off the shelves, right? So that kids don't have access to them. And I'm not sure if politicians don't remember the history if they don't want you to remember the history. If they remember but they erase it, they don't want you to know. So let's not forget. And let's connect the dots, always. Okay, thank you.
I just want to close by thanking Sarah for an amazing presentation, and a presentation that I think exemplifies what universities are all about. As some of you have observed, they are places for the free exchange of ideas, even when those ideas sometimes lead to fear and difficult conversations. So thank you for opening up Research and Innovation Week here in the way that you did. And I want to thank the audience members. There were wonderful questions, lots of interesting observations from you as well, so thank you very much. Please enjoy the rest of the week, and there are more lectures coming up in the President's Series, so you can find out about those online. And I also encourage you to check out the Indigenous market that's just outside the doors. There'll be some wonderful things there. Thank you all very much.